Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I actually have a question for you that I've been forgetting to ask before we move to anything that's on your mind. We're at the moment where we're deciding whether or not to get a pet. My two girls want a pet, and it's the dog versus cat conversation. I notice you're
Yeah.
always tweeting pictures of your cat, but I know you're also a dog lover. Do you not have a dog?
Yeah. No, we cover other people's. I go walking
Mm-hmm.
every day just to meet dogs. I think I told you. I talk about
Right,
this in my stand-up that I know about 200 dogs by name,
right, right.
and they're an absolute joy. A dog, but there's two reasons why we don't have a dog. One, I travel too much.
Mm-hmm.
You can leave a cat sitter and it's happy. It gets fed. That's it. With a dog, I can't stand that look on their face
Right.
when they go, why are you leaving me? They're just too. When I was growing up, I used to go on holiday with my mum. My dad used to look after the house and dog sit, and that was his holiday too because he could get drunker. And when we came home, our dog pretended to be ill, like come out limping or something. And the vet said, yeah, it's just he doesn't want you to go away again. So they do have I mean, they do have emotions very human-like, very close to ours, that
Mm.
attachment, what looks like, fear, shame, gratitude, unlike a cat. The other reason, if I'm honest, I don't think I can live through 15 years of knowing I'm gonna have to say goodbye to that dog. It's bad enough with cats, and it feels just as bad. I've
Mm.
every cat I've had to put down, I've been in a state. It's like
But
you
you
can't
do
help
think
but
there's less of an emotional attachment to a cat in the end, no matter how attached you are. It's worse with a dog.
no, I think there's less of an emotional attachment from a cat.
Oh.
So, I can personify pretty much I can feel I can
Mhm.
feel sorry for a car that's left in the road for too
Mhm.
long. um, but yeah, I do think because there's a genuine. It looks like human camaraderie from a dog more than a cat.
Right.
There's still something about the cat that sits on you because it wants to be warm, and I feel with a dog, and I could be totally wrong, and you know more about it than me, but I feel there's genuine love from a dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's my pros and cons. That's no reason not to have a dog. That's like saying you you shouldn't have friends or family in case they
Or I shouldn't have
die.
had the kids in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, yeah. That's something else in the world we're leaving them.
Right.
But I don't know. If I'm honest, that would be the reason. I think the traveling too much, and if you're going to have a dog, I feel you've got to have a dog 24/7. It's your friend, and you've got to be with it. And as I say, it's okay to leave a cat for a couple of days if it's in its own environment or whatever. But I mean, I'd always say get a pet though, for all the pain you eventually go through and the the inconvenience and remembering to walk it, feed it every day or whatever it is. I think I can't imagine not being around animals or pets.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I just genuinely, it sets me up. There is something,
You don't
as I
think
said,
that's the toxoplasmosis talking?
I don't know what that is, but tell me.
It's a brain parasite you get from exposure to cat feces.
Oh, yeah. No, I honestly still try and keep away from pets' feces. I try and distance myself. you know, I
That's a good policy.
I go for the other end.
Yeah.
I like to, I'll let a dog lick my face,
Uh,
but that's where that's
well,
where I draw the line.
well, that's putting a lot of faith in the dog's behavior. Yeah, the dogs famously don't draw the line too well themselves. So
No, well, I think it's a no-brainer. Of course, children should have pets.
yeah,
I
all right,
think it's also a learning process as well. That attachment and
yeah.
then that early loss. I think.
Well, the thing
I
for me is
think it.
I always grew up with dogs, so I don't have I have a very clear sense of what it's like to have a dog and how great that is as a kid. But
Yeah, it's a. It
I've never
is.
lived with cats, so
No, well, I mean, it's very different. Obviously, cats have got sort of one mode.
hmm.
With dogs, there's the there's degrees of stuff
Yeah,
and lots of
cats are either alive or dead.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you don't know till you open the box.
Right.
Yeah, so no, they've got to get one of each if
Yeah.
they're
Well,
puppies and kittens.
that's the longer negotiation that I've
Yeah,
noticed directed at my
I think it
brain.
also I think it also teaches them duty.
Hmm.
You know, you can't suddenly go, I don't feel like doing this today or feeding them or walking them.
I do have another question about cats, though. So I don't know. I guess some people are allergic to dogs, but I never seem to encounter people who admit to a dog allergy. But I do know people who are seriously allergic to cats. And so what happens
Yeah.
when someone with a cat allergy shows up
Well, I
at your
think you
house?
know. I think you know, don't you? By then,
Right.
it's very rarely that one of you gets it and suddenly realizes.
You just killed
Also,
your best friend.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
The
I think
EpiPen's expired, and
it's the actual dander, isn't it, of
hmm
the cat and dog? No, dog are quite common. That's why the Labradoodle was invented, because they found out that poodles are sort of hypoallergenic. So
yeah,
they bred poodles with everything, and then you can get most breeds of dog if it's bred with a poodle, and
I think that's
it's very.
mostly for the shedding, though. People just like not having the hair all over their
Oh,
clothing.
is it? It's a
Yeah.
fashion thing, is it? I thought it was because that there were you were less people were less allergic to them.
Mm,
I could be
yeah.
wrong.
I think,
Well, we
well,
sorted that out. You've
in
got to
Los
get
Angeles,
you
I think it's all about the hair.
right. Okay, yeah.
You got your black clothing that you don't want.
Well, that's the other thing as well about cats and dogs. That the black cats are the last one to be left in rescue homes. People don't want them, and
Hmm.
I thought it was superstition, and it was to a certain degree. But now the worst crime, right, is people don't want black cats because they don't Instagram well,
Oh
which
my
is
God.
like the most
Right.
infuriating, shallow reason I've ever heard. I mean,
Yeah.
I just if you want to get more annoyed at the world, just know that fact.
Yeah. Just filter by
I know.
Instagram. Yeah.
Oh
Instagram thought.
God.
Wait a minute. So what kind of breed of cat do you have? That's a very
Uh,
good
uh,
looking
uh,
cat you keep Instagramming.
a moggy, a big old normal rescue cat, a big fat healthy tabby.
Uh-huh.
Just a yeah. So yeah,
But that's what
and
that's
always
called.
get a
That
rescue.
is a tabby cat.
Tabby, yeah, with a bit of tortoiseshell. I mean,
Uh,
but
okay.
always get a rescue as well. Don't buy these £5,000 designer dogs that have
Right.
been from sort of horrible farms and stuff. Always get a rescue. Go to a pound.
Right.
Get a big old moggy or a big old mutt.
Okay, I have another question that was on my mind to ask you. Have you
Go
watched
on.
any of this new Beatles documentary?
I haven't yet. No,
Oh,
I haven't.
let's
No, I
let's talk
mean,
about that when you do, because it's
okay.
pretty interesting. It's an interesting experience of anthropology watching these guys interact and create.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, right. Okay. I'll have a look. I'll get around. It's one of those things that you get around to 5 years after, I
right,
think.
right.
When there's too much hype, I dig in. I go, no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch it because everyone else is. I'll watch it in 5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have a look. Well, my question, I think this might be right up your alley, because I remember a few years ago, I think when we first came in contact with each other, you'd done a sort of an epic essay, as I remember, or a small book, whatever
Mm.
you'd call it, on lying, hadn't you?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, yeah, you blurbed it. I think that was our first connection. I
yeah.
sent it to you.
As
Yeah.
as I remember, it was mostly about the morality of lying.
Yeah.
I watched this thing that was more about the anthropology and the psychology of lying and the evolution of lying. And do you know the lying experiment they did with different sample groups?
I know some experiments, but I don't know what you're
Well,
referencing.
I'll try and explain it,
Mm.
right? So they got a group of people, a lot of people. They told them they were doing a test, but not what it was or what they were testing, obviously. And what it was to answer as many questions. I think they were just maths questions, as many as they could in a certain time. And
Oh,
then they
and they
would,
could grade themselves.
yeah, they would mark it themselves
Yeah.
and then shred the papers.
Right.
Now, what they didn't know was they weren't really shredded, so people could tell if they were telling the truth. So they got $1 for every question they got right, right? And 70% of people lied,
Hmm.
but only a little bit. They could have lied a lot more, but
Right.
they made it realistic. And we all lie apparently. And then they did another experiment where instead of getting $1 per question, they got a token per question, and they had to go somewhere else to cash it in. And because of that one step removal of responsibility, like they weren't ripping off the person they were talking to,
Mm.
they lied even more,
Hmm.
right? And then they did another experiment where before they did the test, they just said, "Oh, we're going to do this, right?" They're going to tell them what's going to happen. They said, "Please promise not to lie," and
Hmm.
they didn't.
They didn't
They
lie.
lied. They lied a lot less.
Yeah.
So I think it was about social responsibility and guilt, and which is fascinating. That if you're going to lie, and I just wonder where it came from, because it's obviously part of our evolution. It's obviously due to group selection, where I suppose it was more important, wasn't it? It was more important to lie to survive. It very rarely now lying is a matter of life and death,
Hmm.
is it? And I think a lot of our moral decisions are, our conscious sort of mind suppressing our instincts that might be bad or might have been, more useful before. But apparently it exploded with the advent of language. But there's always been lies in our evolution, even down to, camouflage is a lie in the, pretending you're poisonous when you're not, and things like that. And
Hmm.
I just, I wonder if you know more about the psychology of why we lie, because I think everyone does, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I had a total change in my outlook on this topic. It's really one of the I can count on, I think, one hand and even just a couple of fingers moments in my life where my relationship to a whole set of behaviors and norms and just something that was kind of background became suddenly foreground, and just I had a change in how I decided to live as a person, and it was based on this course I took in college and as a freshman, and it was just a course that analyzed whether lying was ever ethical, and it was just this machine for producing people who came out the other side of it convinced that lying was basically always wrong. Right now, I
Right.
carve out.
That's a tricky one.
I mean, there's kind of self-defense situations. I view lying now as sort of the first step on the continuum of violence, so that when you're dealing with someone who you really can't collaborate with, this is not a rational interlocutor anymore. This is somebody who is, to one or another degree, your enemy, and you're now deciding how much violence you need to use to get them out of your life. A lie is ethically permissible and even necessary in that case. So if you're thinking about whether you have to punch this person in the face, well, then obviously you could be thinking about whether to lie to them first. But generally speaking, I mean, everyone who took this course, it was a fantastic professor at Stanford, Ron Howard. It was a very influential course in the lives of many people because he just deconstructed this background assumption that everyone had that some amount of lying was not only normal, but inevitable and socially desirable. That, white lies were an expression of compassion generally, and you just have to lie.
Well,
There's no
that
way
must
to
be true, though.
navigate social
But that must
space
be
without.
true. You must agree that white lies are from empathy and compassion, and where you want to protect someone's feelings. You don't have to. I mean, there's lots of steps here, isn't there?
Mm,
Because telling the truth doesn't mean blurting it out when you don't have to. So,
right.
if a little kid says to you, "Am I ugly?" I mean, whatever you think, surely the better thing to do is no. Of course you're not. I mean, who would argue that that's the ethical answer?
Well, so there are situations where, yeah. So first, as you point out, a commitment to telling the truth doesn't require that you just blurt out everything you're thinking like you have,
No.
some neurological disorder.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't prevent you from kind of curating the kinds of truths you will tell. It's like, because you can't say everything on any given topic. So there is no burden to say absolutely everything you think or could possibly think about someone or about a situation. So you're
No.
you're filtering by what's true and what's useful, right? And so sometimes it's not useful to say something, and there's no need to say it. And some things can be kept private. I mean, so you can keep a secret, for instance. Although, I'm not a fan in general of keeping too many secrets, but you can be honest about that. If someone says, "How much money do you have in your bank account?" The truth could be, "I don't want to tell you," right? So you can just say that's none of your business. So it doesn't require a lie to carve out different zones of privacy. But in the case you reference here,
Yeah.
there are situations where you're not in a relationship among equals, right? So if you've given me a kid right
Yeah,
now,
exactly. No, that I went straight to that because
yeah,
I think parents lie all the time for the child's
but
own good,
but
whether they're right or
but
wrong.
actually no. But the truth is, I have found that we have really never needed to lie to our daughters. I'm only aware of once telling a lie to one of my daughters, and it was really by accident. It was just I just it was kind of like a malapropism. I just we'd done a Google search for photos for something. I forget what the search was, but she was very young. Maybe she was 7, and we came upon an old woodcut, like a 14th century woodcut of somebody being decapitated, and
Right.
she said, well, what was that? I just got tried to move by it as quickly as possible. She said, what's happening there? And I said, oh, that was a very a very old and impractical form of surgery. That was my lie.
Well, that's nearly a
Yeah,
joke. Well, then
yeah.
we get into what's a lot. I mean, okay, well, that's interesting because so have you never pretended there's a Santa?
No, no. And that,
Okay.
that was actually the most common question I
Yeah.
got in response to that book, Lying. What about
Right.
Santa? So
Right.
I have a whole argument about why you don't need to lie about Santa. But the interesting thing is, I heard from dozens and dozens of people who remember what it was like to learn that Santa didn't exist and to realize that their parents had been lying to them about it. And they remember how betrayed they felt by their parents.
Really?
Yeah, and
Really?
it was actually a wound in the relationship. They just felt like they never quite trusted their
Wow.
parents.
I can't imagine that. I mean, I just, you know, what about like I could say my mum lied to me about there
And
being a God, but I wouldn't. I mean, it's ambiguous whether she was lying or she believed it, or
hmm,
or not. But
well,
as an
in
atheist, I
that
think
case,
it
I
is a
think
lie.
she probably believed it.
I
Also,
don't know.
I did hear from many fundamentalist Christians who said, "Oh yeah, my parents never lied about Santa because they didn't want us to think they were lying about Jesus, right? So they were scrupulous about Santa."
That's interesting as
Yeah,
well, isn't it?
yeah.
That's interesting as well to give another a comparable piece of information more credibility. That's really good. But hold on though.
Hmm,
Okay, I think that we've got to decide what constitutes a lie because I think you're being very strict what a lie is
hmm,
when it comes to talking to kids. What is that? It's something else, or I don't know. I mean, because if they ask you something and you say I don't know, and you do know, that's lying, isn't it?
hmm. Well, yeah.
That I
So
mean,
I
so
mean,
is
yeah,
changing the
I've
subject
never,
lying? Is pretending not to have heard their question lying? I think
yeah.
there's an ambiguity to what lying is. I wish I could think of something. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible that you say that confidently, even that you say it, whether it's right or wrong, and I'm sure it is. But that blows my mind that you don't lie. And
Well,
I only ever mean white lies, of course.
you know,
But
because I mean, here's the thing. It almost never. I mean, the truth is, I'm almost never in a situation where it's remotely tempting, where I even see it's like we live in three-dimensional space and it's impossible to visualize, the fourth dimension. For me, the dimension, where I'd have to point where it's tempting to lie, it has almost been lost in my experience. Like I can't even find it. I can
so, what would you
recapitulate it.
say? What would you say when they say like when someone dies, a family member dies,
Mm.
where are they now? What do you say?
Well, I mean, so the honest truth there, and so this is just a kind of a happy accident because you and I are in slightly different camps here. My honest truth is, I don't know, right? Like I can get into the details of why it's intellectually credible to think that nothing happens, right? That there's no further
Oh, I see what you
experience.
mean. Okay,
But I
I
don't.
see what you
But
mean.
I just
So you
I can.
say,
That's a big blank spot on the map for me,
so
right?
you genuinely say, you genuinely and honestly say you don't know.
Yes, right. And so yeah,
These poor kids have got to ask the right question to get an answer, haven't they? They've got to ask about 15 questions to put you on the
yeah,
spot.
right, right.
I'm
I've
going to
become
give
a
them a
very good
list. I'm
lawyer.
going to go
Yeah,
right. Ask him this. Ask him this.
right. Yeah, it's a deposition. the endless deposition of that. Yeah.
that's that's
Yeah. I'm
incredible.
I'm like I'm like Bill Clinton and Bill Gates in a deposition. It
Yeah.
depends what the meaning of
Well,
is.
do you ever take the fifth when your kids are asking you about stuff?
No, but in truth, there's really if once you recognize that you're on the same team, right, and you have the interests of this person at heart,
Yeah.
then it's just a question of how best to communicate the truth to a child generally. And so in the case of like that decapitation woodcut, right? I mean, there's been many versions of that sort of thing that came up later. Like one of our daughters would hear us, talking about something that's something horrible that had happened out in the world, and she would ask, so what are you talking about? What? And the honest truth is, listen, there are all kinds of things that happen in the world that you don't need to know about now, and this is
No,
one
but
of them.
that's sort of my point, because your argument is a bit of a circular argument. If we're trying to find out what's best to tell a child, that includes whether the truth is the best thing to tell a child, because we
Mm.
don't know the reaction. So you might find out that sometimes lies are better for the child in the greater scheme of things in the world,
Yeah, I
because
just don't know.
there's lots of other
I think
factors.
I think there are a few cases. There are cases in extremis, right, where you're in some sort of emergency, where it's easy to imagine, or at least it's plausible to argue that a well-crafted lie is the compassionate and even life-saving, artifice that you need, whereas the
Yes,
truth, however well-intentioned, is going to run risk of serious harm. But generally,
yes.
I just have not been in that situation, and it's always honest to say, listen, we're your parents, and there's all kinds of things we know that we'll eventually tell you, but right now, you don't need to know that. Or
That's no, that I think it's fair enough, and I think that's probably erring on the side of caution, and you've still got a lot of manoeuvring at your disposal there. It's not like you haven't gone to the point of no return on in either way. So I think you're right. I think in general, but I think that if you take lies by themselves, in general, they are wrong. But when they're connected to the rest of the world, all those knock-on effects, what you've said before, what caused it, I think it is ambiguous whether always, and I only mean in the sense of like act versus rule utilitarianism, right?
mm-hmm,
Do not walk on the grass. Very good rule, right? It's for everyone. It ruins it. Don't worry. Someone having a heart attack on the grass, of course you walk
yeah.
on the grass. So taking that as a metaphor, there must be many situations where certainly immediately it's better to lie, and I feel that we know that. And again, I'm only talking if it's a compassionate lie, if you're protecting the feelings of someone else. I think that if you're protecting your own feelings and your own reputation, giving yourself an advantage, because that's what a lie does, isn't it? It gives you an unfair advantage in the world over someone else who's left in the dark.
Yeah.
That's why it's morally wrong
Well,
in a
it
very
is.
broad
It is the
brushstrokes.
very. I mean, psychologically speaking, it is the temptation to lie is always born of the sense that your interests and the interests of the other person have now diverged, right? Like you have a view of the world that you now can't share, or it would be too awkward to share, or you're for whatever reason not disposed to share it with this other person. You don't want to give them access to reality as you see it because you think in some way it would be bad for you. And so it is the very definition of selfishness, even if you have told yourself this story that it's also compassionate. Rarely do people, in my experience, think it all the way through to the end and actually believe that if they were the other person, they wouldn't want to know. Usually the so-called compassionate lies are born of just this feeling of awkwardness, that it's just you don't want to
I
be the
agree.
one to say this.
I agree.
But
Yeah.
if you were the other person, you would want to know, right? Like if I mean, the great example in my life that came pretty early for me was I had a friend who was a screenwriter who had been working on a script for probably a full year, and he asked me to read it and he asked me what I thought of it, and I thought it was terrible, right? I mean, I
Right.
really thought it was
Yeah.
bad, and
Yeah.
but the truth is, I also thought he was very smart and a very promising writer, and it's like he has gone on to have a great career as a screenwriter and a television writer. And the net effect of me telling him that I thought that script was terrible was that forever after, he knew I was being honest with him whenever I said I thought something was great. Right? It's like he now I'm someone. I mean, this is now decades old, but I've
Sure.
always been someone he could trust to calibrate. What he. And it's not to say that my opinions are always right, but he knew I wasn't bullshitting him ever. And that's something. So, and with my with our daughters, I mean, given how much we've emphasized the value of honesty, they just know we're not going to lie to them, and it's such a refuge emotionally. It's like because what you have to price in is how meaningful praise becomes from someone
Definitely.
who will not lie to you. That's a very different kind of praise you're
So
getting than from
why?
from people who are just
So
giving it because that's what they do, because it's too awkward to say anything critical.
so your decision outside your own personal integrity is that this is better for the child, isn't it?
Mm.
To learn the lesson that never lying is a reward for all those things. Would there ever be a case? Could you imagine where you'd want them to lie
Yeah,
to get
in a
out
self
of
in
something?
some kind of self defense
Self
situation
defense.
when you're dealing with
Yeah.
someone who you can't trust, and who you don't you're treating this person as a kind of dangerous object because that's what they've
So you,
become.
you count it almost as self defense. So the
Yeah.
metaphor is violence with.
Yeah, and
I get that.
even there are it's worth considering whether the truth might not be better. I mean, so like the classic case is the Nazis show up at the door and you have Anne Frank in the attic. The Nazi at the door says, "We're looking for a little girl. Have you seen her?" Now, obviously, in the general case, the ethical thing to do there is lie and say no,
Yeah.
sorry. But if you were actually in a stronger position, the truth would be better. I mean, what you actually would want to
You could
happen.
say, yes, I got her. Fuck
Yeah,
you. There's
fuck
nothing.
you. And
Yeah,
if you make
of course. Yeah, of
if you take
course.
another step, I'm going to put a bullet in your face. Right? It's
Yeah,
like
exactly. Of course.
yeah,
But we know that's great. I mean, that's probably the best example we could ever have here. But to take it as a metaphor as well, the world is full of us not being in charge of the outcome.
right,
It's full of that, isn't it? And I sort of agree with you in principle, definitely, that I don't lie. I never lie for gain. I never lie criminally. I never lie. I just never lie to take an advantage. I never do, right? Because I know it's wrong, but also I couldn't stand. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't. But I do lie. As I said loads of times, will you come to my party? I can't
mm.
come to your party. Now the reason I can't is because it's awful and I don't want to be there, right? But I haven't said that. I
Yeah.
just said I can't. So
Well, so that's no, yeah, but that's an interesting. I'll remember that next time I invite you to a party.
No,
Uh,
I'd make up a really good reason
yeah,
for you. With you, I'd
I
say
would not
I
detect it. Yeah,
I can't. I'm giving blood at the orphanage
right.
again, and
Yeah.
you'd go, "Oh, he always gives blood at the orphanage." So that'd be a
It's
really
got this,
believable.
he must not have any blood left.
That's why he's so pale and
Uh,
weak. Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
fainted on. I heard he fainted on stage at Wembley. That's,
Yeah.
he really
Oh
couldn't come to
God.
the party.
Oh dear.
Well, so
Yeah.
okay, but this is a great example, which is yes, it is tempting to lie in those cases, but once you set yourself the rule that you're just not going to lie, even in those socially awkward situations, two things happen. One is it holds a kind of mirror up to your life where you are then forced to recognize, okay, I'm the kind of person who doesn't want to go to these kinds of parties. I mean, do I want to
Yeah.
be that kind of person? Is that like what does this say about me that I don't want? That the truth is I don't want to go to this party,
Yeah.
and that's worth reflecting on. And two, it holds a mirror up to all of these relationships that you might not want to have, right? Maybe you just don't want this person to think they should keep inviting you to the party you don't want to go to, right?
Yeah, well, it does depend on whether it's like, yeah, friends, family, best friends,
Right.
acquaintance, annoying acquaintance. Yeah, exactly. Of course, there's a sliding scale of wanting to go to the party or
Hmm.
not. But it was just that I was the only reason I came up with that was that I'd say Okay, no, I know what you're saying. Really, yeah. I think that's a white lie because it's for their good, and the truth would hurt. I'd say, no, I don't like you enough, or
Right.
that your party will not be as good as me sitting in my pants watching Netflix, right? But I suppose I'm really protecting myself, aren't I? That I'm getting the best of both worlds. I'm staying in and watching Netflix in my pants, which
Mm.
is what I want to do, and I haven't hurt their feelings, so they might like me still. So it isn't.
But
Yeah,
also that, it's interesting. I mean, there are, there's certainly relationships I have where I could honestly say, I'm sorry, I really just don't feel like going. I just want to just stay home and watch
yeah,
Netflix, right?
yeah,
And that would not
yeah.
be because of the nature of the, all past communication. That would be fine. I mean, the person's not going to take it personally.
No, exactly. Yeah,
And I mean, actually, this reminds me of something that Annika discovered when we, I think we just had our first daughter, and she's being asked to various situations, and because she was never telling a white lie to get out of having lunch or going to parties or whatever it was, she was just constantly being honest about how exhausted she was, how overwhelmed she was, how just like she's sorry, I don't want to go, I'm just too
yeah,
tired. And she realized that most people don't do that, and you get a false picture. You almost get like an Instagram fake image of how good everyone's life is and how much they're holding it together, when really they're busy telling white lies to get out of situations that they're just too exhausted to be in. And once you start telling people how exhausted you are, you unmask that in your network of friends, and everyone confesses, yeah, I couldn't go, I just couldn't bring myself to go because I was so tired, I just felt like watching Netflix.
yeah. But I mean, the script example that happens to me a lot, right?
Mm.
Would you read this right? And my heart sinks. But I already know, however bad it is, I'm never going to say anything too terrible about it. What I do is I try and find one good thing about it, and I
Right.
just say that. I go, "Oh, I like the so and so. Good so and so. Good luck with it." I could never say. I mean, how honest were you? I mean, I know. Again,
No, I
this is
was
not my best friend. I'm assuming this is not my best
no,
friend or
no,
our
no, no.
brother.
On the it flip it around. So you're saying you would be honest with your best friend,
I'd be much more honest with my
right?
best. I go, oh, I don't know. There's a thing about that. I wouldn't do that. It's a bit clear. I'd still do it with compassion, but I'd be a lot more honest because I care more. I'd want my best friend to make it more,
Okay, but what
But
if you had a
yeah,
friend? What if you had a
yeah,
friend who was spending all their time trying to do something that you really thought they were not cut out for, right?
yeah.
Let's take it. Yeah, I think
No, that's a very good
the
one. I
example I
think of that.
use in the book, I think, is with an actor. Someone who
Yeah,
wants to be an actor, wants nothing more than to be the next, Leonardo DiCaprio. But for a dozen reasons, you think this whole project, this whole life course is doomed, right? Like there's no way this person is going to make it as an actor.
yeah.
What do you say?
Well, I'd still keep my mouth shut because I could be wrong. I wouldn't want if I was the person to say you'll never make it, give up. If I could see that alternative reality, if I was God, and I suddenly see that in 5 years
Mm.
he actually does something and he gets a lucky break and he's massive, I don't want to be the one in my reality that destroyed his dreams because I don't know the truth
Well,
with
no,
those things. Those are a
but that's
lottery.
part of it. So that uncertainty is the an accurate description of the truth as you see it, right? So you can always discount your opinion. You could say, listen, I this is just my opinion, but honestly, I think you
Yeah,
should find another game to play, right? Like that,
But but you've established that the more you tell the truth like that, the more brutally honest you are with people, the more they respect your opinion.
hmm.
So now, me being brutally honest about how terrible he is has much more chance of him believing that and giving up. All I'm saying
Okay, but that's
is yeah, I
okay,
know.
but that's
No,
a good
I
thing. But you just have to think of what
it might
you.
be a good thing, or he might be depressed not doing because people can do the thing they love and never get anywhere,
That's
but
true.
actually have had a happier life doing it.
Well, yeah, okay, but yes, but that again. This is a conversation, and that's more of the truth you're putting out.
Yes, I know. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing up little, I suppose, counter examples or upshots, really, because it is a tricky one. But also it comes down. I mean, it comes down to the shoot one person and the other nine go free, or all 10 get shot. There's a certain amount that goes. It's not up to me to shoot anyone.
Hmm.
It's not up to me to save the other. It's not up to me. This isn't my problem. Do you know what I'm saying? I think it's totally valid morally to go, who the fuck are you handing out?
Okay, but just you just have to visualize. You just have to visualize the complete situation. Here we're talking about someone who has asked for your opinion,
Right.
and
Okay.
if you imagine, this is just the golden rule. I mean, what would you want
Yeah.
to know if you were in their place? If you were trying to be an actor and you actually didn't have the talent for it, or the people closest to you thought you didn't have the talent for
Okay.
it and they weren't
But
telling you,
now,
right?
but now I'm an expert in the know that can genuinely help him.
Mm,
You see, I think the important thing is here that I'm not. Well, people come to me and show me their scripts because they know I've made my way. I'm quite high up in
mm,
that industry. So it's not just my opinion, it's how useful I am because I could give them golden nuggets.
right.
I could give
Yeah,
them,
that's
so I think we have to take that out of it.
yeah.
I think we have to, I don't know I can't think of an example, something I don't know about, in my honest opinion. I think that is more interesting because it's just purely my opinion and whether
Hmm.
that's hurtful or not.
I'm glad we've had this conversation because it's been something I've been wanting to tell you, and I'm just going to be brutally honest. I don't think this stand-up comedy thing is going to work out for you.
You know what though? When you started like that, it was very well done, and there was a little adrenaline rush. That what the fuck's he going to tell me? I actually, for 1 second, then I thought this is going to be a joke. This is going to be a joke. But for 1 second, I thought, what the fuck is he going to say?
Yeah.
But that's my point. I don't want to be the one to brutally hurt someosomeone's feelings for one
Okay.
second,
Yeah. No. But
even if in five
right.
years they might appreciate it more.
But the thing, I do think the golden rule is the right heuristic here because it might be the case that you wouldn't want to know if you were in their shoes, and then it becomes more interesting to consider whether you should tell them anything. But if you know you would want to know, I mean, I've seen situations
Yeah, but
where all of the friends of this person are having a conversation behind their back, and no one is telling the person
yeah, well, that's
how they're. I
that's
mean, and we're talking about their
yeah,
closest friends. It's
I
crazy.
know. That's really unfortunate and awkward and a little bit sad, and because we're assuming they're delusional now, aren't we?
Yeah,
And
on
it's
some
not
level.
nice to be delusional, yeah. But you say the golden rule, and I think there's a bit of a luxury to saying that because when you say I'd want to know it, so do you. That's arrogant because everyone's different, and
Hmm.
just because I can take insults, I can take trolls. For me to suddenly go, well, I can take it, so I'm going to just troll someone on Twitter and do a devastating thing. Then I'm going to go, what are you crying for? I can take it. I think that's I don't know. I
I
don't
mean,
think the golden rule is
that's an adversarial situation. I think the yeah, I mean, you can correct for what you know of the difference between yourself and another person, but
sure.
I mean, the truth is, you very quickly train the people in your life. I mean, once you start being rigorously honest with everybody, then people don't ask your opinion anymore unless they actually want it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm almost never in a situation where someone's asking me my opinion, and then I discover this mismatch between, my valuing honesty and their expectation of, me just kind of blowing smoke, and they walk away unhappy. Like that hasn't happened for decades that I'm aware of in my life at this point.
So I know now if I ask you something and
Yeah,
you
you're
go,
gonna get it.
I don't know. I know you're lying. Sam, do you think I'm losing my hair? I don't know. Well,
No,
look, I don't know.
I
You're
don't know.
not looking,
I
Sam.
don't have
You
eyes.
Ricky, I'm blind. Sam, you're not
I've been
blind.
having
You're
problems with
juggling.
my
I can
vision.
see.
Yeah.
I can see you juggling. Am I going bald? Yes or no? Well, that's a very interesting one as well
Mhm.
because just going back to your kids asking you, where do dead people go? I
Mhm.
don't know. That again, that's very convenient for you because this is my thing with when people mistake agnosticism with atheism, right? That one's knowledge and one's belief. So no one knows. So your kids could say, "What's your best guess, though, Dad? What do you
Mhm.
believe? You're a smart bloke, Dad. What do you believe?" so you don't
um,
know. No one knows. what do you
I'm going to
believe
say my friend
happened to
Ricky
my
over here
friend? Yeah,
believes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
and that's why we're not
Uh,
going to invite him to the next party.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I am a. In general, I'd say if anyone asks me, I think lying is wrong for all the reasons we've discussed. I do try and be brutally honest. I think it's something to be proud of, but I still wield that with a bit of
Well, the
compassion, and
was
I put it in fiction as well, like the film I did with our mutual friend Matthew Robinson. The scene in that where I lie to my mum because there's nothing to gain from that. I
right.
can suddenly lie. She's terrified of death. She's definitely going to die in 30 seconds.
Hmm.
What would be the point of saying you go into the ground, your worm's meat? Bye, mum. So that's an example there of clearly I could say it's a good lie, even though you could also say it made me feel better that I didn't have to go through that awkward thing and see her in fear.
Right.
I think that's quite clearly and distinctly an example of what we have to agree on is a good lie, don't
Well,
we?
again, yeah, there are situations where you're now no longer relating to someone who is an equal. I mean, it's a paternalistic situation where you're saving a child, or you're saving
Yeah.
an old person, or someone with dementia. You're saving them some emotional distress,
Yes.
and
Oh, I see what you
that's where
mean.
it
Okay. That.
becomes tempting.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
in those cases, yes, it is sort of like, it's different, but it is like the self defense situation where it's no
I
longer,
agree.
you're just putting a fire out.
Well, with those two caveats, with nothing to gain or lose, and self-defense, I think I'm in agreement. I
But
think in
there's one variable here which we haven't mentioned, which is probably the biggest, certainly one of the biggest reasons not to lie, is that it eliminates a kind of cognitive overhead that people have that is completely unwieldy, and it is a serious, it's a continuous basis for embarrassment and reputational harm, which completely goes away, which is when you know you're going to tell the truth in any situation, there's nothing to keep track of. You don't have to remember what you said last time. You don't have to think about
no, I
what you
know.
told some other person who may have told this person. There's just a seamlessness to your life where, so if your story changes, honestly, well, then it's like, it doesn't matter what I said last time. I might have believed that last time, but now I'm just telling you how things
I
look to me
I
right now.
I agree, but I don't think we can treat morality and lying and all those things like a science. I still think there's a certain amount of dogma to it that if you say it's always wrong to lie or what, I think
No,
there's
no, it's not.
arguments to
It's
be
not
had.
always, but it's not always wrong to shoot someone in the face either. I mean, that's
No,
like,
it's not.
I mean,
No, it's not. It's definitely not. No, I think we've both agreed on that one. Yeah,
in fact, it's
yeah,
probably better to lie to them and then shoot them in the face.
yeah. No, okay, yeah, we do agree.
Yeah.
I think there's an ambiguity of what lying is as well. I think there is a convenience of sidestepping the lie that isn't totally
Mm,
honest. But with all those caveats, I think we're in agreement that
yeah.
in general, it is always better to tell the truth. And I think the truth will out anyway, because there's delusion as well, isn't there? And there's like, people denying the facts that are in front of them.
Mm,
So I mean, that's never good on that scale. It's dangerous to humanity, of course, but on a very personal level, I think, yeah, you probably do have a better life, and everyone around you has a better life if if they're all honest and everyone knows they're honest. That
yeah.
that is surely the best society we could have, because we only have to undo all these fears of heaven and hell because we started them in the first place. A secular society from the last living person, the oldest person in a society who was brought up secular and logical, and that probably wouldn't have those. We probably wouldn't see those fears starting, would we? It would be. I don't know. I don't know about that psychologically. Is it better to tell kids to not know, to not give your best guess, not to give the whole truth, nothing but the truth? I mean, how what does death what does
Well,
death
well,
mean
the
to a
thing, I
child?
mean,
What does death mean to a 10-year-old? I can't
the
remember.
lie is always the stark lie of certainty about heaven, say, so grandma is definitely in a better place and we're going to see her again.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense given the fact that people are still assimilating every death as though it were a genuinely bad thing. I mean, people are
Yeah.
bereaved. They're sorry to not see the person again in their life. But if it were actually true that you were sure that she went to a better place and that you will be reunited, it's just not a bad thing. Death is just, I mean, and so insofar as you can, I mean, the temptation to believe this is that insofar that as you actually can believe this about death, it does remove the sting in death. I mean, there is no problem. It's a
I suppose I
promotion.
can't get over that. I can't, I don't even, I care less about humanity and society when we're talking about this sort of thing than I do about what does it do to one 6-year-old
Mm.
when you're brutal. I keep coming back to that. Is it, I don't know whether we know it's good or bad yet.
I think we know that the thing you actually want to be able to teach a child in order to equip them to be a sane and well integrated human being is not that there's this fictional world or this world, this world about which no one can be sure that rectifies every problem, every apparent problem in life. The good people go to the good place, the bad people go to the bad place, and you get everything you want after you die. It's not to teach them that. It's actually to equip them emotionally to deal with reality insofar as
Yeah.
we have every reason to believe it exists. So I mean,
Yeah.
so you want a
Yeah.
child who learns that grief is part of life, and it's an expression of one's love for that person, and it's totally healthy and predictable
Yeah.
and understandable, and it bonds you to other people with this force of compassion. I mean, we're all in this circumstance together, and I mean, the very interesting thing about the pretense of certainty about the afterlife that religious people indulge is that it isolates truly grieving people. I mean, when you're a fundamentalist Christian and your husband dies and you're actually miserable, right? And I mean, insofar as you're paying lip service to the idea that they might be in heaven and you're going to see them again, you are actually bereaved, right? You're actually
Mm.
devastated. You're surrounded by people who are just aiming their happy talk at you, saying,
Yeah.
it's all for the best and he's with Jesus, and
Of
you're
course.
you're isolated in your grief. You're not actually getting real compassion from them. You're getting a fantasy that is not meeting you in the moment of your grief.
Well, okay. Well, in conclusion, if you want the truth and you want kids to grow up knowing the harsh realities of life to prepare them, I think you should not only get them a dog, but get them a very sick dog.
Mission accomplished. Yeah.
Good. That was great. That was great.
That's hilarious. All right.
Good. Great. Daddy is
All right.
dead. Merry Christmas. Good.